I was working on getting my aircraft maintenance engineering license from the European Union. That license brings you up to the international platform where you can work for all the top companies. Think about Emirates, Qatar, and all those companies, right? You have to pass 16 papers. So I passed 14, and I actually came to the UK to write my last two papers. 3 days to the second paper, COVID happened. UK borders were shut down, exams was cancelled, my ticket was cancelled. And at the time, my dad had flown to Ghana. Fortunately, I had a spare key to his apartment. And when the exam got cancelled, I had to go back to his place. And I was locked in the UK for about 8 months continuously without any salary and without any pay. I had to be hiding from the landlord because my dad had told him he wasn't there. So he wasn't able to pay rent at the time. So it was an interesting time, but that time gave me a lot of time to reflect.
Welcome to another special production of the Business 101 podcast. I am your host, Ayo Oye. This is the penultimate episode of the limited series, specifically sharing stories and experiences from some of the most prestigious and most selective business schools in the world from the perspective of recent international graduates. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel at this point, I don't know what to say. You already know that there's a lot of value, that is packed in these episodes. And I always make sure that only the best of the best people are invited to this podcast. So please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Now, I have the privileged honor of welcoming someone that I actually honestly consider a friend and is going to be speaking to us, from the perspective of one of the world's most beautiful business schools. And that is very true. Okay. This is public ranking and one of the best business schools in the world, ranked consistently as one of the most prestigious in North America and the rest of the world, the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. My guest is David Owusu-Gyebi. I believe that's right pronunciation. An recent MBA graduate from Duke's Fuqua School of Business, also served as co-president of the Business in Africa Club while he was a student. In this role, David led initiatives to introduce African-centric events and programs like Taste of Africa, an event that showcased African food and culture to the broader Fuqua community. David spent a decade as an aircraft maintenance engineer prior to getting his MBA. And in this role, he was responsible for ensuring the airworthiness of aircraft in the Ghanaian airspace. If you've ever been in the air, you assume that the aircraft just takes off and just takes it to where you're going to. But there's actually a team of people who make sure that something doesn't go wrong in the air, right? And David was one of those people for a decade. During his MBA, he interned with AlixPartners and later joined as a full-time vice president. This is one of my few vice president friends, okay? So this is, as I said, a very important conversation. You guys must subscribe. David holds a BSc in aerospace engineering and is passionate about sports, cooking, and helping people. Like I said earlier, David is someone I consider a friend, and I feel very privileged to be speaking to him today. All of that being said, please make welcome David Owusu-Gyebi to the conversation. Thank you for coming, my friend.
Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here.
Yeah. David, do you remember that you and I got to the US the same day? I believe we got to we went to Chicago first and then go to RDU the same
Yeah,
day, right?
yeah, I think so. And you had to crash in my room because you had nowhere to sleep in Chicago.
It's actually true. I
Yeah,
actually forgot that. Yeah, the first part, I did not get a room allotted. That's another story. Yes, I
yeah.
did
So
crash in.
I'm part of the reason why you were not thrown out when you go to the US. So,
We have apparently David is part of the people that ensure that I'm still in the US today, right? We started our relationship on a weird note. It was helping me out, but we've come a long way from that, right? And David has done amazing things at Fuqua. He was one of the pillars of Duke University and particularly the business school. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but David and I did go to the same business school, and I was privileged to see upfront the kind of person that David is If you speak to anybody who was in our class about David, one thing you would hear or repetitively is the fact that David is very kind. He is very selfless, almost to a fault. David is the kind of person that would have an assignment due the next day. I will spend 4 hours helping people case prep. Weird guy, but amazing guy. Uh, David, again, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, David, I feel like a good place to start is your background, right? You have what a lot of people consider a non-traditional, profile. And I speak to a lot of people. Obviously, this is the, I believe, episode of this conversation. And many people, did PE previously, did policy, did consulting, did banking, kind of the more typical traditional profiles that you see. But you were an aircraft engineer. What did that feel like, you decided to get an MBA? I'm sure you had spoken to a lot of people and figured that you did have a non-traditional background. So what was that journey like for you to deciding, I actually want to get an MBA?
Yeah, so honestly, having an MBA was never on my radar. Going to school after undergrad was never on my short to medium term radar. My plan was also always just to, work for a while in the engineering space and then just probably start my own thing. So I realized that working as an engineer, which was my passion was always maths, physics, and things that related to that. So that was, your stereotypical engineering path, and I ended up doing that with aerospace engineering. Working in the career, it was fun. It was exciting, because how do these huge machines travel and fly and hold up? Whereas you, a human being that weighs anywhere from 180 pounds to 250 pounds, you jump up and you come right back. But I was intrigued by the concept of working on these machines. But then further down the line, I realized that my career path was plateauing, and I was looking for a way out. And at the point, I was looking for any way out. Actually, applied to multiple jobs in different countries, and around the time COVID kind of halted progress in the aviation space because every aircraft was grounded, and flights had just, all the good work that had been done to create a market for the aerospace industry had been brought down just by COVID. Right? So we're basically starting afresh. So I think a colleague of mine, he also has an aerospace background. We worked in the same company. I was on the phone one day with him, just lamenting how I feel my career is at a standstill. And he told me that, hey, somebody just told him about this MBA, in which he's actually applied and just got admitted to Columbia Business School. And this guy is somebody I really respect. He's like my big brother, my adopted big brother. So when he said, I started looking into it. Initially, I thought it was far fetched, but then he connected me to a couple people who were also Fuqua alums of different schools, and they made me realize this is actually a feasible task. So I quickly jumped on board the MBA trail, researched which schools I could apply to, and I realized that, hey, I'm somebody who thrives in teams. So which school actually prioritizes teams? And I came across Team Fuqua, interacted with people from Fuqua, and I realized that this is a place I want to be. So at the end of the day, Fuqua was the only school I applied to, and God being so good, I actually got admitted to Fuqua, and it went up from there.
Actually, I don't think I knew that. I think that would be you and Benedict that only applied to Fuqua, which is I thought it was only Benedict, but I didn't know you
Yeah,
also only applied to Fuqua.
yep. It was just Fuqua, and I got in, and I was like, first choice. So let's go. Yeah,
Now, my next question was going to be, what your journey was like in thinking through. Obviously, there are a lot of options in terms of where to go for your MBA, right? Even
yeah,
starting from the countries to go to, North America, there's US, there's Canada, there's Europe, there's Asia, there's a bunch of places that you could go to, right? And I just remember that you and I actually lived in London around the same time, and you have a weird COVID story around the UK, which I'm not gonna put you on the spot. So, okay, I will not make it share it, but it's very interesting. Please, please, please.
yeah. So then, at the time, I think I was working on getting my aircraft maintenance engineering license from the European Union. That license actually kind of like brings you up to the international platform where you can work for all the top companies. Think about your Emirates, your Qatar, and all those companies, right? So I had two more exams to write. You have to pass 16 papers. So I had passed 14 over a 3 year span. And I was left with the last two. So I actually came to the UK to write my last two papers. And I wrote the first one. And 3 days to the second paper, COVID happened. UK borders were shut down. Exams was cancelled. My ticket was cancelled. And at the time, my dad had flown to Ghana saying that when I'm finished with my exam, we should just meet up in Ghana to celebrate. Fortunately, I had a spare key to his apartment. And when the exam got cancelled, I had to go back to his place. And I was locked in the UK for about 8 months continuously, without any salary and without any pay. I had to be hiding from the landlord because my dad had told him he wasn't there. So he wasn't able to pay rent at the time. So it was an interesting time, but that time gave me a lot of, you know, time to reflect and to, just just enjoy and rest because I think at the time I have not been able to rest a lot. So I spent my COVID experience or the whole 8 months of that 2020 and locked in a one bedroom in the UK.
That must have been. I still think about it, and I'm like, that must have been
Yeah.
so weird. Because I mean, I was in Lagos at the time. I believe the early part of COVID, I was in Lagos, and yeah, most places were locked down. But I always looked forward to the evening walks to at least see some semblance of normalcy. And I
Yeah.
can't imagine like just being, locked in a space for 8 months. It's insane without your
Yeah.
dad being there. And like you said, your dad had already, made plans to travel. So obviously, I told his landlord, I'm not going to be there. And
Yeah.
then you just happened to be there for 8 months.
was it was an interesting time.
Look at you now, Vice President, Mr.
Exactly.
Vice President.
Grass the
Doing a
great
long,
story.
come a long way, come a long way. But yes, back to the question I was going to ask, right? Did you ever consider anywhere outside of the US and North America? And if you did, what was that decision process like for you to eventually narrow down on the US, especially considering that you had lived in the UK and experienced other cultures as well?
I knew the UK or the European terrain had a lot more hurdles than the US one in the sense that you needed to have an X amount of money locked up in some account. And I knew I didn't have an uncle or an auntie or anybody to call on and say, send me this amount of money to have as a frozen account. So I knew the European route was out of my radar. So when my friend told me about how relatively easy and straightforward the US one was, all my focus or all my attention was on the US school. So genuinely, I didn't look at any other school from any other region. I just focused on US schools. And most importantly, I just focused on Fuqua and I think a couple others as a backup, just in case Fuqua didn't work out.
You and Benedict are such big risk takers, man. I still cannot really figure out how you apply to only one school in the full application cycle. Honestly, it's
It's not a coincidence. It's the two of us who went skydiving.
exactly okay. Okay, so both of you are brothers in that sense. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You guys are big risk takers, and I'm really glad that it worked out for you guys. Obviously, in fact, David and Benedict were also one of the very few people who had job offers before they even started business school. So I guess risk does pay off.
Risk does pay off
I'm glad that
sometimes.
worked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's talk a bit now on, the application process itself. You already started hinting at some of the things you did and some of the people that you spoke to. And for anyone watching this who doesn't know how to pronounce Fuqua, David has mentioned it 5 times. It's
Yes.
not
Multiple
Fuqua.
times.
It's not, I don't know, there's so many weird pronunciation. It's
Yeah.
Fuqua.
Fuqua.
Exactly. I think someone explained how to pronounce it to me and he said, it's not one qua, it's not two qua, it's a
Yeah. It's
few
not.
qua.
It's a Fuqua. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a good way to know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Now, David, talk a bit about the application process. So think about the end-to-end process, right? School selection, we've gotten through that. But there's also stuff like, visa application, getting funding, scholarship, loan, um, and eventually making the journey to transition to the US, that end-to-end process. What can you share relating to that?
Yeah. So I mean we've spoken a bit like you said about the school selection. So between that I knew I had to take the standardized test, right? And I knew that I didn't have enough time to go through the GRE, GMAT route. So somebody told me about the executive assessment, and I researched.
Oh, yeah, one of the few people who did that.
I researched on the schools that the executive assessment allows. Sorry, the schools that accept executive assessments, right? Luckily, Fuqua was part of this, so I was like, okay, this tallies, right? The school that I want to go to accepts the quickest, or let's say the relatively easiest exam. So I went ahead and did the executive assessment. I think I prepared for that in like 2 weeks and just went and wrote it because at the time I was so desperate to just get out of that phase I was in. So everything was just, anything the quickest way out,
Yeah.
taking the shortcuts in my mind. So I took the executive assessment and I on my first try I got the grade that was good enough for the top 10, top 15 school, which was I was like because I wasn't ready to spend another $350, right, to write that exam. So after getting the score, I went around just trying to answer the essay questions. And what I ended up doing was I did a lot of research. I think I watched almost every YouTube video that Fuqua had ever posted about how to go about the essay type questions. I attended an almost every webinar or virtual session and spoke to both current students at the time and alumni as well. So I rapidly put together my essays and shared it around to multiple people, to other Fuqua ambassadors and stuff. Anybody who was willing to spare me a set of eyes, I just
Yeah.
shared it with them. That's Richard Akofi at the time, Omache, and a
Yeah.
couple other guys. There's one guy in his investment banking, I've forgotten his name, Bank of America.
I think I know exactly where you're talking about. I can't remember it now, but
Yeah,
yeah.
they were very helpful and they helped me structure the essay and all that. So I now put in the application for the exact early action route. And thankfully, I got the interview invitation. And funny thing, at the time, Ghana was also experiencing what Nigerians are used to, which was the power outage.
What do you
So
mean?
you know your NEPA situation. So
Calm
yeah.
down. Okay, I'll
So
calm down. Moving on.
So I knew that I didn't want anything to mess up our opportunity. So I actually went to pay for a hotel room for the day of my interview, Fuqua interview.
That
Because
was
even
smart.
if there's power outage, all these hotels have a backup generator and
Yeah.
stuff. So I did that, and lo and behold, there was power outage on the day, and the hotel's backup internet kicked in. So when the backup kicked in, my laptop was completely locked out of the Wi-Fi. So I had to do
Ah,
my interview on my phone. And when the interview was going on, I kept getting calls from my workplace because I was on the evening shifts that day. So imagine you're talking and the call comes through, it pauses the Zoom. I had to cut it and everything. So it was a very interesting interview. So I was really
yes.
thankful to God that I went through and I got the admission. So the moment I got the admission, I had enough time because it was the early action period, right? So I started, I think we're on this MBA page where folks were talking about visa dates and blah, blah, blah. So I started researching and I was like, is it possible for me to go and get my visa in a different country? And if that is the case, which country do I have a very organic and genuine story that would make sense for me to be in the country at the time to apply for the visa? So at the time, my dad was in the UK, and I was like, either way, I'll have to go spend some time with him before I move to the US to school. So I tried applying to get a visa date in the UK, and I got one around his birthday, and that was the reason. So I came to the UK to celebrate my dad's birthday and also wish him farewell whilst I go to the business school, and that was it. So they gave me the visa. I think I got my visa in
Yeah.
April, and so I had enough time to save up for my flight ticket and make arrangements to come to the US. So I think that was on a high level the phases that I went through
Yeah.
from school selection to arriving in the US.
That makes sense. And thank you for sharing very succinctly about what that journey looked like. Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight the fact that one of the things that you are applying for only once who allowed you to do was that you were able to demonstrate real interest in Fuqua, right? Like you said, spoke to current students, attended many, if not all of the webinars, watched
Yeah.
all the videos. And so I'm sure that commitment came across in your interview. And so even the issues around internet and whatever were not enough to mess up the interview. And I'm
Yeah,
glad that worked out.
yeah, it
Now,
allowed depth. Yeah,
yeah, no, please go on.
I was like, no, it focusing on that one school allowed me to go in depth with things about the school. So even to the secondary, the tertiary level of information and research. So it really was helpful. Risky
Yeah,
but helpful.
it worked out because I remember when I was applying, I will not tell you guys the number of schools I think I said it in the episode. Anyway, um, when I was applying for many of the schools, if not all of the schools, actually nobody reviewed any of my essays for any school. Nobody, which is a terrible way to apply to business school. Please, nobody should follow my example. Okay, it just so happened to work out. But what will happen is I would write. I'll finish the application like one night, write the essay and everything, and just click submit because the deadlines were so like
Yeah, they were
next to each
close.
other. There was one today,
That's
one
true.
tomorrow, one on Friday. So I would just finish, click submit, sleep that night, start the next
Move
day
on
for
to
the
the
next
next
one.
one.
It was terrible. It was actually
Yeah,
terrible. So I'm glad it eventually kind of also worked out for me, but
yeah,
obviously you took a more intentional, more strategic approach, which is what most people should do. Now, obviously, you can imagine that, since we started publishing this podcast, there's been 11 or so episodes, and I believe 60 or 60, at my last count, about 60,000 people have seen, all the episodes. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from people. And one of the recurring themes that I've seen is people who have been working for longer post graduation, post bachelor's degree, have a lot of hesitation around pausing their career. People who have been working for 8 years, 7 years, they feel very reluctant to start all over again in some sense, right? And go to a different country, go be an F1 student, or go to Europe and go be on some student visa and whatever, right? You have experienced that. You worked for 10 years pre-MBA, so I'm sure you had all of those thoughts and all of those concerns, right? What can you say to someone who is in that situation or that shoe and who's trying to think through that decision-making process?
yeah. I mean, I took that decision because I was not seeing any clear cut career path development for myself. Because at the level I had gotten to, the next level up was probably a political decision. Let me just, for lack of a better word, right? And those roles are typically not, it's not like a fixed tenure. So whoever is let's say your director of maintenance or your manager is going to remain the manager until he's no longer in the firm, right? So it's like a lot of you are just waiting in line, and it wasn't even about the role per se or the title. It was more to do with how much more can I develop, how much more can I learn, what other toolkit can I add to myself. And I felt like it was the same thing over and over again. Maybe it's a different technical problem with the aircraft, but you have to still refer to the manual, go with your toolbox, talk to the pilot, fix it. It became very monotonous for me. So I was like, okay, what would challenge me? What would give me an extra dimension? What would make me more versatile? And talking to that my friend who was also in the same position and took this path, it made a lot of sense for me. So I would say that if you are somebody who resonates with this, maybe you are at a point in your career where you feel stuck, you do not see any clear-cut career development, and you want a change, you could decide to take this path. But then if there's a clear-cut career path for you, you're passionate about what you're doing, and you are where you're supposed to be, and you see yourself developing the next couple of years, I mean, it's just at that point, that'll be about how much of a risk you can take or you are willing to take, right? So at the end of the day, it's very individual related based on what you want for your life, what you think takes you to that point, and how much of a risk you are willing to take to get there. So on a high level, that's what I think I can say.
No, that makes sense. And just wanted to highlight that, what David is saying is essentially that this should be more so a data driven decision, right?
Yes.
You have to consider what your realistic options are and then consider the trade-offs for each of them. And then in David's unique, situation, made sense to take that decision. And we're very glad that, it worked out for him. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of people who took similar decisions and, or, probably didn't work out or not to
Yeah,
that same extent. So there's no one size fits all answer.
exactly.
And please do consider your own unique circumstance when making that decision. But David, let's transition to another part of this conversation, right? Because what I'm trying to do with each of these, school specific conversations is to bring unique flavors from
Yeah,
each from each school to each conversation, right? So let's talk a bit now about
Fuqua.
Duke, Fuqua, your experience on campus, right? We've spoken about how you got here. Let's talk, I hinted a bit about your recruiting journey,
Yeah.
how you were able to transition into a very different field and got an offer before you even started business school. It was
Mhm.
magical, right? And big ups to you. If I've never said that. We're all really proud of you for making that successful transition. But let's talk about your experience on campus. What, moving to the US felt like for you, what Duke felt like for you, what Fuqua felt like, what recruiting felt like. Talk as much as you can generally, and then I'll ask more
Okay,
tactical specific questions.
that's fine. So I mean, I didn't have any family, or I don't have any close family in the US. So moving to the US was basically like a nomad, right? You're just going to a new place to be the first person, maybe in your lineage, to, be a pace setter, basically.
Mm.
Initially, it was scary, but I'm like, you know what? It's a risk that one has to take. My dad, at a very young age, had to move from his village to France. So I was like, okay, maybe this is what I got to do to also put myself in a better position, because
Mm.
I had tried in my country and it wasn't really working. So let me try this other one. If it doesn't work, I always have my country to go back to. So that was the mindset that I had, that kind of alleviated the fears and made it a little bit more reasonable to move. So coming to the US, I mean, just packed my bag, the thing, clothes, basically. I didn't want to overpack. I didn't need to bring Ghanaian food and all those
Yeah,
things.
you're such a weird person. That's true. You didn't bring any Ghanaian food. This
No,
guy.
I can cook. So all I need is that I just need to get the ingredients, and then I can make whatever it is I want to make,
Why were
right?
you so confident that you would find African stores in Durham?
Again, back to the research, right? So I'd asked a couple people. There are a couple Ghanaians in Fuqua, and I asked them, "Hey, is it easy to get A, B, and C?" And they were like, "Yeah, there's a shop in Durham, Norris, where you could actually get it. And even now, it's better. There are multiple African shops in North Carolina. So one was even within a walking distance from my second year apartment. So I mean, I knew that I could get it. So why would I um load up one bag with food and have to stuff clothes? Nah, I'm like, I'd manage anyway. So I didn't pack any food. It was just clothes and shoes, because I felt like those ones might be more expensive than the food. So that's what
Smart
I did.
guys.
Yeah. And I got to the US. I had a friend who was in North Carolina, thankfully. So I remember he picked me up from the airport and took me to get my cell phone number. So, and then I moved to my apartment. I think at the time, my apartment was not even ready for the dates that I came in. So I had to sublease a second year who was interning's apartment for 3 weeks before I moved into my own space in Lancaster. So that was initially was a bit rough, but hey, we managed to do. So my mindset for coming to the US or to Fuqua was that a lot of people invested in me getting to where I have been, be it the MBA or recruiting or whatnot, life in general. So if I've been able to do anything or achieve anything, if anybody needs help in that specific field, I should be a resource for that person. And Fuqua's culture of Team Fuqua allowed me to do that, because I came with that mindset that, hey, I'm here to help people. I'm here to be the ultimate Team Fuqua person, right?
Yeah.
So my MBA experience was, I knew I was smart, so I'm not here to get on the dean's list, or the academic part of things was not my priority.
Are you shading me? Are you shading me?
I mean, everyone has their their
Moving on.
priorities.
Moving on.
So my priority was not necessarily the academics. I knew I could just do enough to just be around the top, right?
Yeah.
So mainly focused on building community and doing recruiting basically. But I had that figured out before I got to school. So my priority was just the community first before the academics. And yeah, that was my mindset going into it. And what was the third question? My Fuqua experience. My
Yeah.
Fuqua experience was very wholesome. I mean, there are various ups and downs, but that is life. So I learned from both the highs and the lows. I learned a lot about myself and a lot about people and how to, interact with different facets of people and how to properly communicate what you are thinking or your intent, if I should put it that way. So overall, on a high level, I'd say my Fuqua experience was very wholesome. I got to know a lot about myself, got to understand the business terrain, got to understand the United States a little bit, and got to understand people more. So, any more specific questions would I can deep dive in that area.
Yes, I actually want us to deep dive a bit more into the recruiting part.
Yeah,
Again, I glossed over it. You also glossed over it, but I know that for a lot of people, especially international students, when they're moving for graduate study, one of the most important considerations is whether or not they'll be able to find a job, right? So, I want you to speak a bit more as comfortable as much as you're comfortable sharing
yeah.
about what recruiting was like and how you were able to get an offer before you start a business.
Yeah. So I mean, the first step was being very honest with yourself, knowing what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and which of these weaknesses you can realistically tackle within the immediate to short term time frame. So I knew that, hey, I knew nothing about finance. So ramping up to be able to recruit for investment banking within a couple of months was unrealistic, at least for me. Looking at the kind of energy I wanted to expend, I didn't think it was feasible. When it came to tech, I was not the most tech savvy. So I also felt that it was impossible to ramp up to that point. So the only industry left that I knew also sponsored was consulting. And when I started reading up, I was like, okay, this looks like something that my current strength could transfer to. And
Yeah.
I could also easily fill up the gap between where I am and what I need to get to that desired location. So I started researching on consulting. I think I read this book by Victor Chang, Case Interview Secrets, to get an
Yes.
overview. Yeah, Case Interview Secrets. I remember I ordered it off Amazon for a friend to a friend in the US to ship to me in Ghana. So I read the book cover to cover. I watched almost every YouTube tape about management consulted,
Mm,
BCG casing style, McKinsey casing style, Bain casing, basically everything about consulting there was out there. I tried to read about it. And every single day, I did something that was geared towards consulting, be it reading an article on consulting, be it reading a company's profile, be it reading anything and everything just to try and fill in that gap, right? So, in the process of doing that, I discovered pre MBA and I was like, oh, let me give myself a shot at this. So, I applied and I think I got 3 interviews and AlixPartners came through for me, thankfully, which was my first choice company. When I remember when I told you for the first time that AlixPartners is my first choice company, you were like, which company is this and why that over the more famous companies? And I realized it was more of a cultural fit for me. So that was it. I made sure I did a lot of the casing, learned the different casing styles, and a lot of this I was doing on my own, right? And I started doing these preps, I think in January of three, only for me to get to like April or May and I started casing with people who were in the MBA, and I discovered that I had been doing this thing wrong.
mm,
So I had to kind of like unlearn everything or a lot of the things that I had learned
yeah.
to now do it the right way. And I think that's what helped me be in a position to be able to help people case the right way when they were recruiting or when I was helping people prepare for their interviews or consulting journeys. I would say it took a lot of intentionality. It took a lot of dedication. It took a lot of hours. But then eventually, the learning doesn't stop. We're still learning about Excel and PowerPoint and ThinkCell and
Yeah.
all these tools we have to use now. So it's
Yeah.
exciting.
One thing that keeps getting emphasized the more you speak is this, very intentional, very introspective approach that you have to doing things. And I like the fact that you didn't just say, oh, I just tried my best and it worked out. You were very tactical as to how you took, a very intentional assessment of your strengths, what industries, identify the industries that you were most equipped to succeed at, and then went all in, making sure that every day you were doing at least one thing that was, pushing you forward in the direction of where you wanted to go. And obviously it worked out. Today,
Yeah.
my friend is Mr. Vice President, one of the few, one of the few. Yeah. So again, if you're watching this, obviously this is a fun episode, but also make sure that you're not missing the core points, right? This journey, especially if you have a non-traditional background, has to be very intentional, has to be very, for lack of a better word, data driven, right? You have to always know what are you um what are you trying to get? Be very aware of the strengths that you already have, the skills that you already have. Play to your strength. Find the industries where you are most likely to succeed, and just go all in and give it your best. And hopefully, you'll be like my friend David Owusu and be a vice president someday. Anyway, um, David, another thing that you spoke about earlier that I want us to speak a bit more on is, the experience that you had at Fuqua. But I want you to speak a bit more now on your larger Duke experience, right? Because I know that for a lot of viewers and a lot of people generally, they believe that graduate students, and particularly MBA students, kind of live in a bubble of their own, right? They just stay in their school, they don't relate with the broader community. What did you think about the Duke community? How did, the MBA class, in your experience, in your time, how did the MBA class relate with the broader Duke community? What kind of activities, what events brought us together? And, how did you personally navigate both worlds?
So I would say genuinely at least the first half of my first year, I wasn't really involved in the larger Duke experience because I think it took, even though I had failed to admit or I failed to realize it at the time, it took me a while to settle in to this whole new experience, business, the US, grad school, because I've been out of school for a long time. So it was still weird. I remember one of the first lectures, I actually asked this professor that how are we supposed to learn this thing that you are teaching? Because to me, I'm used to a more quantitative driven way of doing things, right? But here we're talking about implicit bias and all these things.
Yeah,
I'm not able to wrap my head around it. So the first half of my first year was mainly trying to settle in and hitting the ground running. But then from the spring terms, I was a bit more intentional because I think you, Benedict, and a couple of other folks will always post something, and I'm like, "Where did you guys go for this?" And you'd be like, maybe it's a DAPSA event, or it's the medical school event, or the law school event. So I started being more curious about things like that. So I started attending the larger Duke African community events. Also, I think a couple other seminars and webinars here and there. And it made me realize that there is a world outside of the business school. There are different people with different perspectives, which also make meaningful impact in our current world and in the year to come. So it broadened my perspective and actually helped me with the settling in, because you got to realize that everything is not just about a business school, or
yeah,
everything is not just about recruiting or grades or networking, right? You could just be out there and be a normal student and be a normal person with the grounding, and actually help with enjoying the experience a bit more. My second year, I even extended it beyond the Duke community to the Durham community, and started experiencing the community more, going for events within the community, and just you know
yeah.
um, networking and just getting to know people who are not even in school and who are just normal people living, and that really paid dividends for my experience.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Now, David, assume that I didn't go to Duke, so I don't know where Duke is. Tell
Yeah.
me, for anyone who's curious, where is Duke University, or where's the business school? What kind of activities is Duke known for, or what do people who go to Duke typically do?
Okay.
What are some of the fun things to do in the location where Duke is at? Just some of those more logistical, tactical questions that
Yeah.
people might have.
Okay. So Duke is number one in the US, located in the United States, and it's located in North Carolina, which is a state in the United States. And within North Carolina, Duke is in Durham. Almost everything in Durham is tied to Duke in a way. So it's very hard to miss Duke when you are in Durham. In the school, I think the business school is okay, I'm losing my bearing, but the address is 100 Fuqua Drive, Science Drive, something like that. Yes. But it's easy, very easy to locate. It's very beautiful campus with a lot of greenery and trees. During the, I don't know whether it's during the fall or the spring, you end up seeing a lot of deers walking around.
Yeah.
It's very nature driven and
Yeah.
very pretty campus. When
Did
you
you know
think about
that Duke has the fifth most beautiful, is it fifth or third most beautiful
think top
campus
five,
in the
yeah.
US?
I think the top five. Yeah, it's very beautiful campus, honestly. I think I got to enjoy the scenery more when I did that. We did that Chapel Tower climb, and you got to really see the lay of the
Yeah.
land, and it was awesome. With fun activities, I'll take you at the Duke University level and then the Durham community level.
Yeah.
Well,
Please.
on the Duke level, number one thing that comes to mind is sports. So Duke is one of the top basketball schools in the US, right? Producing
Sure.
a lot of players for the NBA. So I remember me being a sports fanatic as well. I was going to basketball games like crazy. Like in my first year, I think me or Segale Benedict as well. Like we were barely missing games. So tickets were easy to come by. Folks were always selling their tickets. So and they were not expensive. I think it was about except the UNC game, but most tickets are like what
$10 or something.
$15 or $12 or something. So I did enjoy a lot of the games. It was a great experience where the entire university comes in. So you see people from different colleges. The next thing I'll say is the football as well. So basically all the sporting events. Let me not go down and list them individually. Duke is also big on having a lot of cultural themed events. So there are times where Black American historical events, the Latino events, Asian, so all the racial based events and culturally themed events happen as well. And I mean, basically everything you can think about from religious perspective to political perspective, there are a lot of these events that are along these themes. So when you move to the Durham community itself, when we came in first year, there was not much to do, or maybe we were not curious enough to
Yeah.
identify. As at the time we were leaving, a lot more hotspots had popped up. So if you are into the food scenery, there are a lot of restaurants and bars. If you are into the activity base, there are bowling alleys, there are race go-karts places. There are like where's that place where we used to go play games at arcades, like game arcades.
Arcade. Yes, an arcade.
Yeah. All these things. If you're into the club scenes, I think there are a couple bars and lounges as well that play different kinds of music and host different kinds of events. I think the North Carolina scenery is also convenient or conducive for things like hiking, picnicking, fishing. So there's a lot to do. And that's just within Durham, right? If you want to travel out to Charlotte or to different cities, you can either catch a bus or a flight to just go experience different aspects of the country. So there was enough to do to keep
Yeah.
you engaged.
Yeah. And if you're like David and Benedict, that you don't really love your life, you can go and do
You also go
skydiving.
do skydiving, yes.
Yes, yes. In Charlotte, there's a NASCAR museum. Did you ever go to that one?
No, I didn't. It's one of
Okay.
the things that was on my list that I didn't get to do, but I did go to Charlotte to go watch the Charlotte Hornets play the Boston Celtics, and another game, Charlotte Hornets versus Miami Heat. So yeah, I did a bit of traveling as well. Yeah.
Now, I want us to talk a bit as we begin to, get to the closing of the episode. I want us to talk about your experience as the president of the Business in Africa Club at at Fuqua School of Business. You guys came in at a time where, BI was doing exceptionally well, but you guys elevated the club even further. You brought in some amazing ideas. Shout out to Austin. Shout out to your co-president. You guys thought about very interesting things that kind of made BIA more in front of people, right? You guys elevated the experience, made it more popular amongst the students. Speak a bit about your experience combining education, recruitment, all of that with leading a club and some of the initiatives that you were able to bring up front
Yeah.
as president of the club.
Yeah, thank you for that. Again, back to my roots, right? Be frank with yourself and identify where you currently stand and where you envision yourself being and what are the gaps to fill. So we came in, BI was doing well, but then we realized that, okay, we did exceptionally well on some things, but then there was also opportunity for improvement in other areas. And there was even opportunity for new initiatives just to
Mm.
expand our reach further. So we came in and our three themes mainly were community, and then the community, we looked at it as both internally and with the larger Fuqua community. The second one was with recruiting, which is the top priority of everybody coming to, or most people coming to the MBA. And the third one was the academics. So we looked at it on these three levers and we're like, what are the initiatives that we could do to foster community both within BIA and between BIA and other communities in Fuqua? The second one was what are the initiatives that we can put in place to enhance recruiting and even increase, offers to Africans. And the third one was with regard to academics, how best to make life easy for folks to be able to, find their feet early so academics doesn't take away from their experience. So with regards to the community, the internal community, we realized that we needed more family centric or family themed events where people will come and it's like you are just at home with your brothers and sisters, right? Or your relatives or your close friends. So we always make sure that there's a lot of food because there's nothing that draws people out than food, especially my African friends. Food, if there's abundance of food, you're going to find Ayo and Prince and the likes over there.
It means the second Ayo, not my own.
I meant you. Yeah. And make sure that you always have to go packs so that they can have food.
Okay, I'm supposed to be a very put together person on this episode. Why you did this?
Feeling your true colors here. So yeah, but then so we had those kind of events, and then to showcase BIO Africa, the African community to the larger Fuqua community, because that was some of the complaints that we're hearing that people are like, we don't know about you guys. We only see you wearing your T-shirts, or we know you're from Ghana or Nigeria, but we don't really know much about BIA. So that's when we introduced things like the Taste of Africa, where we, curated different meals from the four regions of Africa, that's North, South, East, and West, and just make people pay a very, just a token to come and sample all these meals. And the first one was such a success that the business school leaders actually requested for a second version of it, which we did in the spring term as well. So that was very helpful. We also had webinars where we invited, folks who are from Africa who had made it in the US to talk about the experiences and to give us the steps or the building blocks to also be successful in the US. When it came to recruiting, we realized that we weren't maximizing the pre-MBA opportunity. So a lot of times when I was at least coming into school, I realized that I got the invitations from current students close to my interview date. So I was like, what if we move that timeline forward to the point where you can even help them review their resumes, build up their soft skills? It would now flow through to the number of interview invites that are going to be received. And lo and behold, when we did that, we more than doubled the number of interview invitations during the pre-MBA and more than doubled the number pre-MBA offers that were actually dished out.
Yeah.
So because our year we had four of us who got pre-MBA, but then after these initiatives, I think the pre-MBA offers jumped to about 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that was the initiative we took for pre-MBA. And then for the main recruiting, we ended up kind of like divvying up the people. So basically the cabinet members, and we're very intentional about, okay, curating content or curating materials that would be helpful to investment bank, tech recruiters, and anybody within our year who had recruited for these industries. You are automatically responsible for nurturing and guiding the first years, and which also proved a lot of dividends. So that was it on the recruiting side. And on the academic side, we're organizing a lot of how are we calling those? A full day of like tutorials and just mentoring sessions or tutoring sessions, both as a group and individually. And overall, I think these things combined elevated the experience and people were able to derive value from those.
Yeah. It wasn't all serious things, guys. There was also Afrobeats. party?
I forgot about that. It was that under the community side. So there was food events, and we also had, I think, up to now, arguably the best Afrobeats party of all time.
I will leave that for you people to argue with
I mean,
Yinka and our
yeah,
president.
I'm still gonna, I'm gonna keep that crown until somebody proves me otherwise, right? So yeah, so that event we had over 250 people who bought tickets attending. So that was also great, to the point where even the event organizer was like, we need to help her draw more people to her location for her event. So it was overall a very wholesome experience. I mean, outside of the community-based stuff, people had their own individual relations, and we created that platform for folks to be able to interact. And it was normal to also to be vulnerable, right? And you always had a listening ear. We try to create that platform for that.
Yeah, yeah, it was a really good time, and I know that one of the things that you guys did indirectly was also, I mean, because of the kind of events that had already gone forward, people already got, very familiar with each other, and so you would have smaller group event where 5, 10 people just hang out and just
Yeah,
chill in each other's houses, and that was kind of normal for us. And so I
yeah,
think that everyone generally had a pretty good time
exactly.
being a member of BIA and then BBSA if you zoom out a bit more.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and yeah, I mean, shout outs to Dufa, my co-president, and to every cabinet member except you.
I was
Uh,
a what is wrong with you guys? Let me tell you, I was very useful. I was a vice president of external relations.
yes, I mean, I can't. It's your podcast, so I can't give you.
Exactly.
I can't shout. I can't shout you out on your own
You
podcast.
should. You should.
You shout yourself out, so it's fine. But on a more serious, the shout outs to the entire cabinet members who made sure the dreams or the vision was actually executed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Now, I have two more questions for you. One is essentially zooming out a bit more, right? Just taking an international student's view. What was the hardest part of being an international student at Duke and generally in the US?
I think the hardest bit was I think with how will I put this? How will I frame this? With how I didn't think the US was I thought the US was more united than when I got in. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of racial lines, you know, that and with every form you're filling, you need to show whether you are this, you are that, you know. So it makes you subconsciously, it made me become more conscious of the fact that do I even belong, because it's like, okay, you hear terms like you're an alien, you are immigrant, you're this, you're that. That took a bit of an adjusting to, to realize that, hey, this is not your place. And it was kind of like thrown in your face a lot of time. I was fortunate enough, at least, not to notice any racial slur towards me per se. Maybe it was, but I probably didn't notice it. But then that was I think the thing that I had to get the most used to. The fact that there's always, why do I kept asking myself, what does me stating that I am from this place or that place have to do with maybe just filling just a random form, maybe just to, just the most basic of things, right? So that was the first thing. The next thing that I think I had to get used to was the tipping culture, where everything you are mandated to tip.
Yeah.
I remember my first time going to get food, and the person was like, I did not tip. And I was like, yeah, was I supposed to? And he was like, yeah, I'm supposed to tip. And I was like, you didn't even serve me. I went to get the thing myself. Like, because I mean, back at home, you tip because the person genuinely gave you a
Yeah, it
good
went
service.
above and beyond. Yeah.
So I'm like, I placed the order, went to carry my own food. Afterwards, I even have to clear the table, and I still have to tip. So it was a bit of getting used to. I mean, we're used to it now. And what is the other thing? I think and then I think when you go out, how people don't really dance. That was also a weird experience for me because I typically like dancing. So you go out and music is playing, everybody's just standing there looking cool,
That's it. Yeah.
collected, and I'm like, oh, okay. People really
Yeah.
like talking over.
A very Western thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and also how much important small talk is. but in every aspect, right? Not just in recruiting. Like, in every aspect, small talk is very important. So you need to be intentional about what, and this one thing I did. What are the main things that folks in the US typically are interested in? It starts with sports, pets, travel, movies, books, things along those lines. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let me just be familiar with these things so that I could contribute to conversations or I could start conversations and sustain them. So that was another thing to that kind of took me aback. Yeah, small conversations. So I think those are the few, some fun and some serious.
Yeah. And now you're like a pro football analyst. So
Yes. Oh,
that's good.
yes. Right now, just you can quiz me on who is the quarterback of which team, and I got you. Yeah.
What sports team do you support?
For basketball, I'm a Golden State Warriors fan.
Yeah.
For proper football, they say it's soccer here, but for proper football, I'm a Liverpool fan.
It's
The
that.
American football, I just like certain players, but I'm not really a fan of any team like that. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Now, my final official question is, and I'll give some context, right? You know that when we were coming to the US, right, there were some concerns that people had around, what's the economy looking like? What does the immigration landscape look like? And things like that. But I feel like at the time when we graduated and now, those concerns are even more,
Yeah.
emphasized, right? If you were to be redoing the entire process and you were to be applying to business school today, would you go ahead to, make the decision to leave Ghana, leave your 10-year experience in aerospace engineering, and then move to the US on an F1 visa? And what are the considerations that you would have? And that's for anyone, who is in the same situation. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are currently thinking through that kind of situation right now.
So just like you mentioned from the start, I'm a risk taker, and I'm always going to ask myself that I think I have this running motto, right? That I would rather do and find out than sit back and ponder what if, right? So I think with the space that I was in at the time, I still would have gone ahead with it with the hope that, the NBA is 2 years away, right? You probably start this year, so it's probably like a 2 to 3 year window. I'll probably still do it, but then this time around, I wouldn't have been taking as much risk. I probably would have applied to more schools and I probably would have prepared for more industries. And aside that, I would also ask myself, what are some of the hurdles to recruiting, to immigration, to all these things? And then do my own research and realize that, okay, how can I legally do some of these things that would make my experience better? Terms of immigration, as an international student, you require sponsorship, you require an H-1B, you require all those things. You ask yourself, what can I do to take that burden or to take that control off of my employer and within my own court? So are there any visa statuses that I could work on individually? I probably will now start looking into that and exploring that. Are there any companies that are not within this, the traditional consulting, investment banking, tech that folks that are looking for people? I'll probably look at that more, and I would probably also have a backup at home just in case when I come here it doesn't work out. I have something to also fall back on. When I was leaving Ghana, I kind of like closed shop and left. But if I were to leave this time around, I probably would have had, an emergency fund or some sort of investment back at home to be able to fall back to. So I'll look at the different levers and say that, okay, how much of that control can I bring to myself? And what can I do to address those concerns? So
Amazing.
I was still on time.
Thank you for sharing that. And again, very methodical, data driven. So yeah, again, thanks for sharing those. Now that was my final official question, but I have one unofficial question that I like to ask, especially on this series, which is one. Tell me one thing about yourself. It might be an interest. It might be, something you do on your free time that we haven't spoken about that kind of defines the kind of person that you are. And
Mhm.
two, tell me something about your business school, so Fuqua, Duke University, that people cannot find out just by going online or by reading a brochure or something. You have to go to Duke or
Mhm.
Durham to experience.
First one about myself that I'm actually people think I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. I'm actually more introverted than extroverted. A lot of people think otherwise because so my business school experience, because I knew how reserved and introverted I was like, my business school experience is for me to experience the non-introverted, you know, mindset or lifestyle. So that was kind of like again to expand to make me more uncomfortable, to expand my range, right? So typical David, prior to business school, I really don't talk to people. I just keep to myself. I don't really
Yeah,
go
the
out.
aircraft.
I'm just work and go home and
Yeah,
sleep or do sports or something. But so yeah, people think I'm extroverted, but actually I'm not. I'm a very shy, introverted person.
interesting.
I think it's better now, but it's still I still get nervous when I'm supposed to talk to people or you're put on the spot. So
Yeah,
I always get sweaty palms before I engage in any conversation. So it's something I'm
I
still working on, but that's an aspect of me that people probably don't know. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. And the second thing, what about Fuqua do people not? That's actually one that needs a lot of thought.
mm,
Okay, probably say how much of maybe the Durham community, how much of a school city it is. You know, Durham is your typical school city. And so it's two things. It's either you're there for schooling related purposes or you came from there. Doesn't make sense. So
mm.
people typically do not move to Durham. They are either from there or they are there for work or for school. At least that was my experience. So everybody you meet is kind of like in transition mode. They are either there for school and then they're moving, or they came there for work and things like that. So I don't know what that information would do, but I think that's not something you might find out on the internet. Outside of that, a lot of the experience or the things you figure out in Fuqua or in Duke is consistent with what is written out there. Yeah.
I actually didn't think. I mean, yes, you're right that most things in Durham have the Duke name, which sometimes does not mean the university. It might be
Yes.
Duke the person, right? So Duke Hospital, for example, is not really affiliated. I mean, it is affiliated, but it's not really Duke
It's not like
University.
owned by the school. Yeah.
Exactly. There's Duke Energy, which is like, I think the third or the fourth largest energy company in the US.
US, I
It's
think
owned
so.
by Duke the man, not Duke the
Yeah.
school. But yes, there's a lot of Duke
Yeah.
signature.
Yeah. So that's Durham was more like a transition city for a lot of folks. And then some of the actually interacted with some of the locals and they made this point. They were like, Duke is kind of a transition city. People they meet today, they're probably not going to meet them again because the next time they reach out to them, hey, I moved out, I graduated, so I moved out, or I finished my work. So think of that.
I thought you were actually going to talk about how much of pickleball people play at Fuqua.
Pickleball is, I used to talk crap on pickleball. I was like, what kind of sport is this? Until the first day I played and I was
I
like,
will show you
actually,
the lights.
you get it. Yeah, literally, like, yeah, folks showed me the light and I couldn't stop playing. So I think maybe, okay, maybe let me change my answer. I didn't realize how much fun pickleball is until I played it. So
Yeah.
maybe that's something you'll not find anywhere. That pickleball is really fun and I recommend you create a community and y'all should actively play it and it
Yeah.
really helps. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, apparently there's another sport called paddle, which is even more fun than pickleball. We need to
Okay.
check that out. It's kind of like tennis but pickleball. So there's glass walls around. So you know
Okay.
how you play pickleball, like the game stops and starts. Like if you play
Yeah.
outside, you have to stop, get the ball. Because of those balls, it almost never stops. So it's like more intense, more fun, whatever.
Interesting.
We need to try that
Okay.
out. Yeah.
Okay. We should try that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
But
cool.
this has been a very fun, very educative, you know, session. And I just want to take the final 20 seconds of this episode to thank you so much for making time out of your very busy schedule, Mr. Vice President, to talk to me, a bloody associate. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking this time, David.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I know we've been trying to do this for weeks now, and so yeah, thanks for also being patient and we making time. You also making time from your supposedly busy schedule
Supposedly.
to make this work. So yeah. it was fun, and it was
It's-
good thinking back on some of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you again. And see you guys in another episode of the Business 101 podcast. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I'm begging you. Okay. Thank you. See you guys on another episode. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.